Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado, y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política, es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo del público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral. Que el cierre de brechas, que
sí, ahora yo la desconecto.
Podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse.
Listo, Fede. Voy a probar mi micro.
Sí, se escucha. Es ese mismo porque hace ruido.
Ok.
Sí.
Ok.
De nada.
Entonces quedó esta. Bueno, pues.
Que el statement quédate conocido del patriarcado, pues nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, The Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Center's program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. The new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno, y lo dieron todo lo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children. And they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other
that they're growing together.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement quédate en casa, que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras se aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children. and they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes.
Objections? We will adopt it. It is adopted. Very well. In keeping with the promise to leave no one behind, countries in the world have committed to protect the planet and to conserve and sustainably use oceans, seas, and marine resources as provided for under the Development Goal 14 of the 2030 Agenda. The ocean is an essential resource, and its care and protection must be a priority for governments and societies in order to have a sustainable future in our region and throughout the world. Focusing on sustainable economic development, in keeping with studies of the OECD, the ocean is considered by many as the new economic frontier, thanks to the economic resources it offers and its potential to promote economic growth, employment, and innovation. Latin America and the Caribbean have a coastline that is more than 70,000 kilometers long, and on the coast we have some very large human settlements. For 22 countries in the region, the seas represent 60% or more of their sovereign territory. Thus, for the Americas, the protection and health of ocean, seas, and marine resources are indispensable for development. Reports of the CAF report that the region has before it the possibility of diversifying and increasing the coastal marine economic activity, promoting investment in products and services whose business models add value and consider the ethical use and sustainable use of oceans. For these reasons, we must have innovative proposals to build a sustainable economic activity based on the ocean, where we have environmental protection, conservation, economic productivity, and prosperity all together. The ocean and its economy offers great opportunities to have countries be able to construct a more equitable, resilient, sustainable future. And this is why this morning we have invited experts so that together we can reflect on the use, protection, and conservation of our oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable economic development. I would like to thank the permanent missions of Argentina, Chile, the Dominican Republic, and the permanent observer mission of France for its support in organizing this meeting. Very well. Now, I would ask the Secretariat to put on the screen the presentation of Ana Luisa Castronove, Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and International Cooperation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Panama. If you could please put that on the screen. Thank you. Good morning. Warm greetings to Ambassador Jose Fiallo, Chair of the Permanent Council, Secretary General Luis Almagro, national authorities with us, and also permanent representatives and alternate representatives. I'd like to thank you for organizing this important meeting, which is a priority for Panama. I'd like to begin by reiterating our commitment to work together in close collaboration, recognizing the urgent need to restore the health of our oceans and to have a sustainable ocean economy. And this is why it's important to go towards the SDG number 14. Historically, oceans and seas have been vital for transport and trade. It is an essential resource, and this is key for the sustainable development of our region. Latin America and the Caribbean have a coastline of over 70,000 kilometers long. And for 22 countries, the seas represent 60% or more of their sovereign territory. And this has an influence on all nature, and they are directly and indirectly linked to all economic sectors, and they produce more than 80% of the oxygen that we breathe. 40% of the world's population depends on the biodiversity of oceans. So we cannot ignore the blue component in a sustainable economy for Panama, which depends on services and products, and which has one of the biggest waterways in the world. We know we need to be proactive and take real measures to mitigate climate change. This is why we have taken steps to be a neutral or carbon neutral country. Panama has understood that the success of its economy depends on conserving the environment. In that sense, I would like to share with you some positive experiences of Panama with regard to initiatives, policies, and programs to conserve and protect oceans, such as the National Policy for Wetlands, the National Oceans Policy, the National Action Plan on Waste in the Oceans, and the 30 by 30 initiative. In keeping with trash in the oceans policies, we are trying to have integration of a circular economy and doing away with the pollution that we're leaving in the seas. This through the sustainable use of trash and waste which go into our oceans. Panama seeks to establish policies and trade measures which strengthen and reduce unsustainable plastic use. Millions of tons end up in the ocean every year, and 80% of the trash in the oceans is made of plastic, so we must reduce its use. And in that sense, Panama eliminated the use of plastic bags. It began also to gradually do away with single-use plastics. Furthermore, we have also expanded our protected marine areas, and this means that we have met our pledge 9 years before we made the commitment. And so I'd like to talk about the different kinds of initiatives we've had with Colombia, Ecuador, and others. This is an initiative that will allow for management of biodiversity and coastal and marine resources through an ecosystem management plan and regional and government plans supported by civil society, NGOs, and international cooperation agencies. Also, from the Panama Canal, we affirmed the commitment for sustainability in the long term, promoting conservation of nature using existing measures, and also to try to avoid having any kind of crashes with humpbacked whales, and also controlling barges and boats that come through the canal. And we are aimed at, and we will be trying to conserve biodiversity, and we are working with the International Marine Organization. And to conclude, the blue economy is the new challenge that all inhabitants must deal with. We must minimize the damage that we are causing our marine and coastal areas. This is our shared responsibility to work together, to have an integral focus in order to have prosperity and protection, to have sustainable management of oceans, and thus save them before it is too late. In keeping with our commitment, our firm commitment to this issue, in 2023, Panama will be the host of our Ocean Summit, where NGOs, civil society, and governments will have the opportunity to debate and commit to measurable actions to conserve oceans and their sustainable use. We hope to have the entire hemisphere there for this important task. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the delegation of Panama for allowing Ana Luisa Castro to participate in this meeting. Now I'd like to welcome to this Permanent Council Ambassador Olivier Poivre d'Arvor, Special Envoy of the President of the Republic for the One Ocean Summit, Ambassador for Polar and Maritime Issues. You have the floor, sir. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you, Americas, for welcoming us. France is very concerned about this issue of oceans as a resource for sustainable economic development. In Europe also, we want this to be a focus, and we see that as a focus for you at the OAS. I'd like to invite you and take advantage of this opportunity to let you know that the President of the Republic, Emmanuel Macron, has wanted to organize an international summit on oceans at the request of the UN and supported by the European Union, of which France is now presiding over. We want to invite countries that want to commit to defend the ocean. The ocean today is a subject that is lost out when we talk about COP or the biodiversity, but it needs to be focused on. So today it is threatened by pollution, by all kinds of human trash, and also we have the ocean levels rising because glaciers are melting. The Antarctic is threatened, so the president thought it was important to organize from 9 to 11 February in Brest, the capital of Brittany, on the west of France, this 3-day summit. And on 11 February, the heads of government, or heads of state and government, that they should commit to deliverables. In a few weeks in New York, we will have important negotiations. The DBGN will talk about governance in the high seas. And then after the One Ocean Summit in Brest, in Nairobi, there will be a Congress which deals with the use of plastics and plastics that end up in the ocean. At the end of June, we will have a UN meeting in Lisbon that will address oceans. So through the BREST meeting in February, we want to create coalitions, strong coalitions around some issues. Many of your countries are already committed to this through their marine policies. We have island countries, of course. I believe that you are dealing with issues like maritime trade. I'm thinking of Panama and the United States, where we have a very large exclusive economic zone. France is number 2, but in general, I think of Costa Rica. We can create coalitions, and you have a strong commitment to the environment that you have shown in Glasgow and at the different COP meetings. I believe at the BREST meeting, where there will be Europeans and American countries, Asian countries, it is important that the American states be there, and the different embassies in your countries, or our embassies rather, will be getting in touch with you, and we hope that we will have heads of state and government present on 11th February, which will meet, or who will meet with research and international organizations to talk about education on the seas, research, protection of the seas, the blue economy, and the seas as a source of richness. There will be different kinds of meetings. We will have representatives of countries and cities that are threatened by rising seas. I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak for a few minutes, and I want to tell you that France, represented by our ambassador in Washington, appreciates your organization, and we hope that all countries are together with us in this battle to protect the oceans, which are our last frontier. And we believe that the international community and the American states you represent, you will be able to come together with us in partnership so that our grandchildren can enjoy the sea, and that it will not be destroyed for them. I thank you and have a wonderful meeting.
Muchas gracias, embajador, por su presentación.
Much, Ambassador, for your presentation. Esteemed colleagues, to continue, it is a pleasure to greet to this Permanent Council Orlando Jorge Mera, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources of the Dominican Republic. Minister, it is an honor to have you here with us, and you have the floor, sir. Mr. Minister, if you can please request the floor, there is a blue button at the bottom of your screen. Please activate your camera and your microphone. Wonderful, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. I'd like to thank the Organization of American States through its Secretary General Luis Almagro for allowing us to present our vision with regard to the use of oceans as a resource for sustainable economic development. Particularly, I'd like to thank Ambassador Fiallo, the chair of the Permanent Council and of the Dominican Republic. Special greetings to the foreign minister of our country and also the other states members of the OAS. Water is the source of all nature and one of the most extraordinary men in history. And I'm talking about Florentino da Vinci, whose thinking exemplified how important currently oceans and seas are. We're talking about the real pillar of life because it covers 2/3 of the planet and it creates most oxygen we breathe. It absorbs GHG emissions. It offers food, nutrients. It regulates the climate, and they are economically important for countries that depend on tourism and marine resources. The Dominican Republic is part of this reality. About 60% of our population that live in urban areas live on the coast, and the main economic activities that bring income, such as tourism, take place in these ecosystems. We are placed in one of the most important geographical areas in the world to conserve biodiversity, the Caribbean islands, where we have endemic species and we have a great deal of biodiversity. We have humpback whales that come and spend winter and also reproduce there. Aware of that, we need to strengthen the management of seas and coast areas. We've undertaken the responsibility that to protect this unique richness in our planet, we must make our coastal areas protected areas. Since we created the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources in 2000 under a new law, we have gone forward with a legal framework to regulate the sustainable use and conservation of marine and coastal resources as well as internal waterways. And we take into account the 4 pillars that are important: technology, quality of life, and poverty, among others. It's a secret for no one that natural resources are under threat because of the impact of climate change, because of indiscriminate use, and also the intensity of hurricanes and others. In the Dominican Republic, we give great importance to ecosystems, and we see this because we have promoted partnerships to try to have sustainability in order to ensure conservation of coastal and marine biodiversity in the country, to have efficient systems, to make better decisions, and to ensure sustainable enjoyment of protected areas. We would like to share with you some actions that we have taken. We have promoted a partnership between government and the private sector, as well as civil society, to monitor and restore coral reefs. Furthermore, we have a multi-sectoral agreement that is renewed every year to help humpback whales, which come to the waters of the Dominican Republic to pass the winter and reproduce. This is under the auspices of the Ministry of the Environment with other sectors. At a legal level, we are revising our regulatory frameworks, and we are debating in our National Congress a coastal law. Although this is a great challenge, we believe that the approval of this law will directly contribute to strengthening our management capacity. In short, these best practices show the progress that has been made in our country, both with regard to actions executed, as well as with regard to the understanding that the management of ecosystems and natural resources means that there must be a public-private partnership. With regard to the 2030 agenda, one of our priorities is to include our SDGs in our National Development Plan. But we still have different problems, such as statistical data needed in order to measure the progress that we have made. I would like to briefly refer to SDG 14, where we have had progress in our national consultations on oceans and SDG 14. We saw different issues, the problems associated with pollution, mostly because of plastic trash, the need to achieve sustainable fishing models and improve regulations of the fishing sector, and third, the need to improve the critical mass of scientific research and marine technology transfer. In this context, we are convinced that scientific research is crucial to help island countries like the Dominican Republic to understand the challenges we are facing and identify alternatives that will allow us to promote policies to have a healthy economy. What is clear is marine ecosystems go beyond our borders. We must have agreements and investments at a worldwide and regional level, working with scientists in order to ensure monitoring. It is difficult to reach these goals, especially for developing countries like our country. We must have access to financing. Nevertheless, we are taking steps. We are sustainably going forward with activities like tourism, agriculture, and fishing at the same time as we are deepening our understanding of biotechnology in the oceans. The Dominican Republic is joining this effort. We are convinced that only working together and having a common agenda can we be realistic and go forward and achieve sustainable development goals. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. I would now ask the Secretary.
I'd like to request the Secretary to pull up the intervention of Professor Claudio Grossman, Professor of Law and Dean Emeritus of American University, Washington College of Law, member of the United Nations International Law Commission. Chairman of the Permanent Council, Josue Fiallo. His Excellency Orlando Jorge Mera, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources of the Dominican Republic. Her Excellency Ana Luisa Castro Nove, Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and International Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Panama. Secretary General of the OAS, Luis Almagro. Assistant Secretary General of the OAS, Nelson Mendez. Ladies and gentlemen, permanent representatives, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate this opportunity to come before the Permanent Council of the Organization of American States to deal with a very important aspect of the existential threat, that is the increase of the sea level and what it represents for peoples of the Americas, our region. And that's why I'm going to speak about the impact that the rising of the sea level in the region has, and then refer to other legal considerations that we have in the law to highlight the reality, and especially insofar as the relationship with the baseline of information. And I'm going to explain what this is all about, but we are going to be looking at the measured maritime areas. Very briefly, I'm going to speak about what we can do towards a solution that is equitable and well-balanced, and I'm going to also underscore the efforts to clarify the state of play in the region, including delving into the topic that has been suggested, a new international law standard with a view to broaching the threat caused by the rising of the sea. The threat in the recent Climate Change 2021 document, It's a Difficult Science. The Intergovernmental Group of Experts on Climate Change spoke about the human aspect. And we have to look at the driving force behind the rising sea levels since 1971. Given the scarcity of time, I'm not going to delve into the details, but you can look into this and look at the issues that have to do with the rising sea levels since 1971. But just to give you an example of the impact in the region, I'm going to refer, for example, to the impact of climate change in the Caribbean, where most of the population is not only located in low-lying areas and islands, but they also have a vital tourist industry and very important infrastructures, such as ports and airports, which underscores the idea of the impact. The study said that the region will undergo a rising sea level, which is greater than most other areas of the world, given their location, close location to the equator, and their physical realities that are related to that. In addition to that, in the face of more intense hurricanes, the impact will be intensified in the Caribbean coastlines. It is clear that an increase in the sea level represents a huge threat for those maritime, small, insular states. In most cases, the maritime areas of these riverine countries are looked at in terms of their baseline, that is to say, low-line water levels along the coast, which is officially recognized by all. Based on this line, where the water meets the land level, there are maritime areas that are measured. For example, the territorial areas and the contiguous areas, the EEZs, and the continental shelf. All of this is looked at. Now, if the baseline, based on which you can measure a projection, which has an impact on fishing rights, sovereignty, and legal rights, and moves inwards, it will displace the ability to measure things in this area, which is crucial from the economic standpoint. And for states, this is going to have ramifications at the beginning and, of course, over the course of time. Now I'm going to give you a legal analysis. The United Nations Convention on the Right of the Sea is the crux to deal with this issue, also considering the possibility of gradual development. Now, this convention recognizes the importance of the principles of stability and equity. Now then, the Convention on the Right of the Sea expressis verbis tells us that we have to recognize the new issues. Despite the fact that we don't have any express reference, it means that there are not going to be changes, though we have to understand that these changes are not going to move in and over their baseline. Now, this practice has been followed by many states. For example, New Zealand, Jamaica, Fiji, and various other states have adopted the position that they have to look after their riverine areas and should not have to change because of the rising sea level caused by human beings. There are other references that move along that same tack, and more recently a study was done on the practice of Pacific states, and it shows that there is a clear-cut trend along those lines to not accept, from the legal standpoint, that there are ambulatory areas, in other words, things that change with the increase in the sea level. Now, the crucial part has to do with stability. If the baseline moves, there is a possibility of interstate conflicts, given the loss of historically recognized fishing areas. And therefore, this trend in the jurisprudence has to be justified with other arguments based on principles that have to do with the need to uphold peace and avoid state conflicts. Given the dearth of time, I've just given you an overview of the legal arguments, but there's also the issue of equity. States that are going to be most hard hit and suffer the most because of displacement, given this ambulatory baseline, and they're going to be moving inwards, have to be looked at. And we also have to look at climate change, which is the driving force behind the rising sea level. In the light of this, we have to look at very important steps to take. There's no serious study of the practice in the Americas on the baseline. And that's why some of us have thought about kicking off a study process that has to do with these practices. Because from the standpoint of law, a source of law and case law as well, take into account the reality, the state of play, and where states are moving in terms of this direction. So at the beginning of the next year, the university where I work is organized a virtual forum on the increasing sea level and law of the sea in the Americas. And this is our idea. We are going to bring in various universities from the region, from Latin America and the Caribbean. And the idea is to carry out a study of the practices that are taking place. And I've also asked, and I think that the inter-American organizations have to take a position. But right now, there's going to be a study and an analysis. And this means that I'm very happy, for example, with regards to this initiative, to have cooperation of Mr. Burke and others who are finishing up their graduate studies. But there are other contacts as well that have to do with this issue. And why is that? Because we have to do our level best. We have to make an effort to see where practice is going so that we can contribute to this process that has crucial impacts for the Americas and the world at large. Let me just point out that we have to recognize that this region has significantly made progress in the law of the sea, but now it's high time, given the imminent existential threat that hovers, given the rising sea level, and given the ethical issues, for us to once again go towards research and use diplomacy so that we can support a new legal basis, international standards that will allow us to establish the necessary pillars to underscore that if there are no changes here, we will have to do things. So to look at these studies is the best way to act and to avoid conflict and to jump ahead of the future that awaits us. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much. We thank the delegation of Chile for enabling the participation of Professor Grossman in this session. I now give the floor to delegations, inviting them in a very respectful manner to be brief in their interventions. Ecuador has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We truly appreciate the initiative to have this very special meeting of the Permanent Council on this topic, as well as to thank the various speakers who have made their interventions and underscored the importance of seas and oceans, as well as the importance of the legal framework. We have to hope that we will take this issue on. The carbon zero goal will also have an impact. And we see that it will have an impact on ecosystems and other resources that are crucial for the hemisphere, and particularly the small insular states, and that contribute significantly to things that happen in the Caribbean, for example. Given that, we are looking at the current state of play, the continuous deterioration, given the acidification of the oceans. And these are aspects that affect the ecosystems. It's very worrisome to look at the illegal fisheries, for example, and other things that exploit the ecological areas. And particularly when it comes to what is done in different organizations, and we have to look at this and the tons of waste that are out there that undermine everything that is done for the ecosystems. All of this affects the life of local fishermen and others to a great extent, and also local markets, which aggravates poverty. Given these specific situations, and given the recent COP in Glasgow, we have to look at some of the progress in the ecological state of play and move towards sustainable, productive economies. There is the declaration for a new maritime reality, looking at industrial fishing and other areas which join in on the efforts being made. Specifically in the resolution for the multidimensional approach approved at the 51st OAS General Assembly, there is a specific paragraph, 23, which encourages member states to deal with the grave problem of illegal fishing and to participate actively and to cooperate with information and put together strategies in the hemisphere for the sustainable use of resources. Coordinated work to promote work that states will do with different organizations in fisheries and other areas alongside the FAO garners our focus. Whilst we move ahead in the midst of the pandemic, we have to continue our efforts and make identification of long-term solutions our priority, and particularly for the oceans and seas. Historically, the oceans and seas have been used for international trade and have been an essential key source of sustainable development. We have to work against COVID-19 and move ahead with our work when it comes to looking at the oceans and seas as a necessary resource. My delegation would like to work alongside others and recognizes the importance that the oceans and seas represent. We would like to avail ourselves and offer scientific information as well with regards to everything that has to be done. We will not spare any initiatives, and we'll move ahead and work hand in hand with everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Mexico is recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With 11,000 miles of coast, or kilometers of coast, more than 3 million kilometers, or square kilometers of EEZs, Mexico is a country with a deep-seated history of the oceans and seas, and we prize the sustainable use of oceans. In addition to the beauty for our economy, which is a basic part of climate that we look at. Here, my country has a relationship for the sustainable development of seas and the coastline, and is in coordination with other institutions, with 10 ministries of the state, so that we can have economic development of the country in coordination with rational use of natural resources. This allows us to have tools to prevent and minimize and deal with the risks, weather risks, for our population and our infrastructure. Within the framework of this commission, we have a national policy of maritime coast in Mexico with 3 priorities. 1, to improve the measures for the coastal areas by using the sustainable use of resources for maritime areas. We have to strengthen local economies, improve regional competitiveness, and economic productive activities that are responsible for coastal maritime areas. And 3, ensure that these structures work with maritime coastal ecosystems and that they do not suffer irreversible damage as we cooperate to do so. Mexico accords great priority to SDG 14 to conserve sustainably our oceans and seas as well as marine resources. The high panel for a blue economy is there, and we will continue to responsibly work to ensure that these goals are met. We are taking on and looking at climate appeals based on oceans and activities such as restore coral areas to mitigate the effects of climate change that has taken place on the coasts in Mexico State. And we seek to restore the marine diversity through natural means such as increased resilience, given the need to strengthen everything. And we are committed to improving health of maritime ecosystems to protect the species that are native and that are crucial for the populations there and their livelihood, and look after human health and the various aspects and species so that we can have a better life in keeping with the obligations in the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Sea of 1972 to reduce and control pollution in this environment, also in keeping with the goals established in Rio and the SDG 14 for sustainable development of 2030, and also in keeping with the international standards for captures and a reduction of other issues. Mexico recognizes illegal fisheries, which is unregulated, and we move towards sustainability of fisheries. My country is committed to the blue economy, undergirding lower emissions of carbon, social inclusion with a view to improving things given the problem of plastic garbage in the seas. We have to do our level best to solve this problem with policies by spearheading integral work by November 20th, 2030. We formally now are one of the 17 countries that have taken on an initiative. We continue to promote an inclusive view to protect the environment. That's the only way we can uphold our commitment, which is part of the regional understanding on access to information and public participation, as well as access to justice and environmental issues in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is part of this agreement. With regards to the sustainable use and preservation of maritime areas and the high seas, my country continues to actively participate in efforts is part of legally binding documents. We, in February, looked at a design of coastal areas for sustainable development 2021-2030, the framework of which has been implemented and looks at environmental issues of the last generation when it comes to world wealth. We want to look at some of the trends in the world so that we can protect maritime ecosystems for future generations who can enjoy these services. My country is one of the 12 maritime areas in the region which has been declared a World Heritage. And given that, we have 20% of all species. The seas and oceans are a large part of our planet and play an important role in the Americas. There must be coordination amongst countries to preserve this strategic natural resource which will ensure survival of our peoples. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. The delegation of Chile is recognized. Ambassador Isa Court. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much to all of the permanent representatives, and I would like to warmly welcome His Excellency Orlando Jorge Mera, Minister of the Environment and Natural Resources of the Dominican Republic, Her Excellency Ana Luisa Castro Nove, Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs and International Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Panama, Ambassador Olivier Poivre, Special Envoy of the President of the Republic for One Ocean Summit, and Professor Claudio Grossman, member of the United Nations International Law Commission. The special session of the Permanent Council on the use of oceans as a resource for economic sustainable development was convened and spearheaded by the Dominican Republic is very relevant because 70% of the world is occupied by oceans and 30% of greenhouse gases is absorbed by it and represents an additional proportion of other activities. Many people live in coastal areas, and fisheries represents a lot of proteins consumed by the world population. 90% of global trade also takes place over maritime routes. Mr. Chairman, we realize that there are characteristics that are strictly linked with oceans and justify these activities. And I underscore that our country has an 83,850 kilometers worth of coastline. 25% of the population is coastal. We have one of the EEZs, which is one of the largest of the world, and is located in the 12th place, where we have some of the most agricultural and fisheries activities in the world. The sustainable use of resources in addition or in abidance with SDG 14 and Agenda 2030, we are also very concerned with the latest governmental panel on climate change, which clearly states the threat that climate change represents, both for all of mankind as well as for the world at large. climate change is intensifying with disastrous effects, as we can see over the entire planet. Given this, we need urgent measures. We feel it's very important to make strides in the effective preservation of oceans by implementing protected maritime areas so that we can have 30% protection by 2030 and strategic moves on biological diversity. And we also feel it's necessary to progress and implement other activities to protect and preserve the ocean and its biodiversity over and above these jurisdictional areas. We have 43% of our areas as protected maritime area within the framework of the climate change, given President Piñera and his work and the work to protect this area on the Pacific side, and particularly in the area of the Azca, which is an area of ecologic importance with a view to making strides when it comes to this protection. Another aspect that I should like to point out that is worthwhile mentioning is the commitment that we have with sustainable fisheries, both nationally as well as internationally, within the framework of fisheries agreements, where we implement measures that allow for making progress in controlling, monitoring, and surveilling fisheries activities. And as such, we would like to express our concern for the constant illegal fisheries, which is unregulated. And that is why we would like to continue to work hand in hand to deal with this threat for the oceans to be sustainable. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to underscore the work of the high-level panel for the development of ocean sustainable development. The Ocean Panel, which was created in 2018, of which Mexico, Jamaica, and Chile are members. And it aims to transform things and looks at balance between protection and production with a view to generating prosperity. And it has to be inclusive. These measures refer to fisheries, maritime transport, as well as the most important resources that have been underscored by the United Nations conference that took place in Lisbon. The rise of the sea level has become, in the last few years, a topic of increasing importance for a large part of the international community. And in point of fact, this phenomenon is having repercussions in many important areas, given livelihoods on the coastal areas, particularly the small insular states. And it's quite probable that a lot of states are indirectly affected as well. For example, displacement of population or lack of resources are signs. With the rising sea level and floods in the low coastal areas and islands, many countries will be less inhabitable, and this will lead to partial or total depopulation. This then has become an area that is a problem that affects the entire world, and that is why this rising sea level brings to light a host of different relevant questions for international law, including special resources and discussion that has to be had on this. We'd like to thank Claudia Grossman for his presentation. Our organization should urgently start to think seriously about the impact and the challenges for our inter-American legal systems. We have to be in a position to propose, not only react to things. And as such, Chile has worked to strengthen the ties when it comes to climate change in oceans, to bring to fore different questions, looking at spearheading things so that countries can include measures that have to do with climate change. And then finally, the global economy depends on the oceans, the climate and organizations with which we share the planet. So as we move ahead, looking at 10 billion people, we have to grapple with the future, with nature alongside us. And for this, we have to invest in productive systems and sustainable resources that supports life and will allow for inclusive prosperity. These are goals that have been put aside but because of the COVID, but we now have time for reflection and thought. And this points to the changes that we have in our, or need in our region. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for convening this very important special meeting of the Permanent Council. And in the future, for future generations, it is urgent and it's everyone's responsibility. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Costa Rica, doña Alejandra Solán.
Is recognized. Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Costa Rica is pleased to address this important issue here, and we thank you for convening this meeting, and we thank our special guests for their presentations. The health crisis showed that human beings need a clean environment and showed that we need to undertake joint work in order to overcome challenges, not only to prevent future pandemics, but also to have sustainable life on our planet. So Costa Rica believes that nature-based solutions are the best tools to be able to reach the goals we have in the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement. Last October, the UN approved a resolution in which it recognizes that living in an environment that is clean, healthy, and sustainable is a human right. Without it, it will be difficult to enjoy other rights, rights to health or the right to life. We believe it is very important that this political forum also has its focus on this in its tasks. And so the loss of biodiversity and climate change are linked. We must not look at them as two separate things. And oceans have an essential role to play in regulating the temperature of the world, capturing and storing carbon, and ensuring food security and economic development. We have an opportunity to protect our natural resources, which is why my country promotes High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. This is a nature that is led by France and Costa Rica, as indicated by Ambassador Poivre, the envoy of the President of the Republic for the One Ocean Summit, Ambassador for Polar and Maritime Issues. This initiative promotes that 30% of ocean resources be protected by 2030. Thus stopping the loss of biodiversity. More than 75 countries have responded to this appeal. 11 in this hemisphere. All member states should join in this initiative in the framework of COP26 in Glasgow in November. As the Vice Minister of Dominican Republic mentioned, the presidents of Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama signed a declaration to protect and manage the Coco, Galapagos, Coya, and other islands, as well as the unique ecosystem, which is a marine corridor of the tropical East Pacific. This has to do with a corridor where we have sharks, turtles, and others migrating. We must protect this. Costa Rica participates in international processes that are underway, such as the debate to adopt an agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity in areas outside of territorial waters, a new treaty that regulates the complete life or life cycle of plastic trash and microplastics that end up in the ocean, and also a code with regard to the ocean's use. These are just some examples. We cannot have a true sustainable economic recovery or effectively fight against climate change and achieve the SDGs if we do not take urgent measures to protect and conserve our seas and oceans. Now, more than ever, we must use the tools that are provided by international cooperation to go from words to action. Costa Rica has showed that policies guided by nature is not only ecologically responsible, but also it is financially profitable. Our economies must be inclusive. They must respect human rights. They must have gender equality. They must be green and sustainable. To this end, we must have decarbonization, resilience, and protection of nature as principal pillars of our economic recovery. We continue to build together. Let's do that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. The Dominican Republic has the floor. Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Representatives of permanent missions, observers, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, we'd like to thank the Chair of the Permanent Council for recognizing the importance of the issue of the ocean as a resource for sustainable economic development. We also thank the missions of Argentina, Chile, and the Permanent Mission of France. We have supported them, so we include this on our agenda. We want to thank our presenters, and we thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience and also your perspectives. The Permanent Mission of the Dominican Republic would like to take this opportunity to recognize our Minister of Environment and Natural Resources, Orlando Jorge Mera, for his eloquent presentation and also his insistence on undertaking commitments under the auspices of COP26, especially because he has emphasized that we need to protect our oceans and that this is essential for sustainable development. Chair, our region has a great deal of coast where many people live. And for them, oceans are not just a natural resource for recreational purposes, but it is a source of economic development. The preservation of marine ecosystems is essential for food security of our people, especially for small developing island states. So we must have the best practices in the management of waste in the ocean, such as plastic, and also residual waters and others in order to ensure the conservation of the marine ecosystem. Achieving this goal is only possible if we are aware of our regional responsibility as well as our individual and state responsibilities. Chair, we want to conclude by echoing what the President of the Dominican Republic stated before the UN last September. And I cite, we have an historical responsibility to leave a better world than the one we have now. But this is only possible if we have a global transition towards a new sustainable productive model that is equitable, that is in keeping with the SDGs. This change is only possible if we have multilateral effort that ensures the rule of law, human rights, the welfare of everyone, and the conservation of the environment, leaving no one behind. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Ambassador. The alternate representative of the United States now has the floor. You have the floor, sir.
Ambassador Frieden, could you please? Okay,
can you hear me now? Sorry. Good morning, Chair, and thank you for hosting this special PC on such an important topic. I would like to also thank our honored guests for their insightful and informative presentations. The United States believes that increased climate ambition across sectors and across international fora is absolutely critical to protect the ocean and the communities that rely on it. We know that the ocean and climate are inextricably linked. We have seen the profound impacts of greenhouse gas pollution on oceans, which include rising sea levels, changing global weather patterns, ocean acidification, deoxygenation and warming, and biodiversity loss. These impacts result in a cascade of effects on communities worldwide, leaving no one untouched. We know that ocean-based solutions, from decreasing shipping emissions to scaling up offshore renewable energy to protecting and restoring coastal blue carbon ecosystems, can provide at least 6% and perhaps as much as 21% of the emissions reductions needed to keep the global 1.5 degree target within reach. This is a critical decade to dramatically scale up ocean and climate action, which are two sides of the same coin. That is why the United States joined the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, a multinational initiative harnessing the power of the ocean to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide jobs, enhance food security, improve climate resilience, and sustain biological diversity. As a member of the Ocean Panel, the United States will develop a sustainable ocean plan to manage our ocean area within the required 5 years. In February, the United States will co-host with Palau the 7th Our Ocean Conference. The theme of the conference will be Our Ocean, Our People, Our Prosperity. It will build on the momentum of previous conferences to mobilize ambitious new commitments and plans to protect our ocean, our people, and our planet. We urge all actors to join us in accelerating progress on ocean-based climate actions to support the achievements of the Paris Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Tiene ahora.
Ambassador, the delegation of Canada, Ambassador Adset, you have the floor, sir.
This event today, and also thank our presenters for their insights and their passionate defense of the world's oceans. This is an important topic that we're talking about today. I'll speak a bit from the Canadian perspective and then maybe a bit more broadly. For Canada, we're blessed. We're an ocean-rich country, country that borders 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic, connected by what is by far the world's largest coastline, measuring a total of almost 250,000 kilometers. So for us, as a country, we're deeply connected to the ocean, both as a vital resource and also as a very integral part of our identity. And we are acutely aware that the ocean is central to the world's climate system. A healthy ocean plays a key role in mitigating climate change. It also has the potential to secure health and wealth for generations yet to come. But as others have said so far this morning, the health of our oceans is under threat from climate change and from pollution, making coastal communities more vulnerable and endangering biodiversity and endangering food security. Canada is thus committed to working with our partners to ensure ocean conservation and sustainability. And I'm going to continue in French to elaborate a few of those points.
We have a global strategy with regard to the blue economy, which will ensure the long-term growth of our blue economy while we restore the health of our oceans. Once we achieve this, this will be indispensable to be able to coherently manage oceans at a government level, and also to promote our interest and use oceans sustainable. At a worldwide level, the oceans are a priority for us, and I'll give you some example. When we were the president of G7, we adopted a declaration on the health of oceans. We committed to spend $3 billion to support this objective. During COP26, Canada highlighted its supplementary support for ocean initiatives, $9 million to ensure resilience of oceans, which will help small developing islands and coastal states to mitigate the impacts of climate change. $6 million for the Worldwide Fund for Coral Reefs to support international efforts to restore these coral reefs.
Area targets, which some have mentioned this morning already. Canada has surpassed its target of 10% protection of marine and coastal areas established by the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. And so we have committed nearly $1 billion to meet our national marine target of 25% by 2025, and are working towards a further national marine conservation target of 30% by 2030. Others have also mentioned the issue of marine plastic litter, and I want to touch on that for a moment as well. In June of 2018, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, the UK, and the European Union adopted the Ocean Plastics Charter. I think it was an effort to demonstrate our commitment to take concrete and also ambitious action to address that problem. And we were very honored to have been joined in that effort by several countries from this region, including Jamaica, Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Chile, and Panama, and would also welcome others that might wish to join this as well. And we are looking forward to engaging in discussions at the UN Environment Assembly towards a new global agreement on plastic pollution. Mr. Chair, I could go on, but I know this morning time is limited, but I did just want to come back to reiterate the point that I started with this morning, and I think one made by other speakers this morning as well. The health of our planet is intimately connected to the health of the oceans. So with that in mind, we're looking forward to continuing to work with OAS partners on these issues and supporting the use of the ocean as a resource for sustainable economic development. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador Atzet. The delegation of Peru has the floor. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank you for chairing and convening this important meeting to consider the ocean as a resource for sustainable economic development, as well as thank our experts and authorities who have made presentations this morning. Peru is a country with marine resources and a long fishing culture, and a coast that is thousands of miles long, and which is also using the Pacific Ocean. And we participate in different multilateral forum with regard to oceans. The Agenda Peru includes issues that have to do with oceans and sustainable use of their resources. I will give you a brief overview to show our commitment to this issue. With regard to regional fora, I can mention that we are part of the regional South Pacific Fishing Organization, which is involved in regulating the South Pacific fishing areas. We are also part of an organization that is regulating natural resources in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. We are part of the International Maritime Organization, where we are highly involved. This year, COVID-19 meant many of the committees diminished their tasks, so we had virtual meetings. Despite this, Peru assumed the presidency of the council and will continue to head this up and is participating in work to reduce greenhouse gases. In 2019, Peru was re-elected for 2020 to 2022. Peru is also a part of the International Whaling Commission. This organization looks to have regulations that conserve whales based on the best available scientific information. We, since 1986, have ceased to hunt whales based on international prohibitions. We are also party to the international treaty to protect birds, and we are trying to counter threats against these birds. We are active in this organization because we have many marine birds in Peru. We also have gone to our ocean summit. One took place in 2019, and it was focused on reducing plastic waste and also having sustainable fishing. We had a goal to reduce in 50% the use of plastic bags and 100% of single-use plastics and the use of polyester. Also to protect our coast by having protected areas, and also to promote artisanal fishing and reduce marine litter, and having integrated management of solid waste. With regard to the UN conference to support the achievement of SDG 14, we have undertaken 6 voluntary commitments which involve the public and private sector in the framework of the Declaration on Our Future, which was adopted in 2016. With regard to the initiatives that have been put forward, we have the 30 by 30 initiative, which is promoted by the UK and invites countries to protect 30% of the world's oceans. This has been signed by 26 countries to date, and we are undertaking internal steps to be able to sign this. We are also taking internal steps to support the International Declaration on Transnational Organized Crime and World Fishing, the Copenhagen Declaration, which is promoted by Norway. The objective of this non-binding instrument is for the international community to recognize the involvement of transnational organized crime in illegal fishing, which has a negative effect on society, the environment, and the economy. This overview shows the commitments of our countries to preserving biodiversity and the ecology, as well as protecting marine resources. I would also like to mention that Peru will actively participate in upcoming meetings in order to have agendas so we can have a more sustainable management of oceans in upcoming years. Thank you, Chair. I thank the delegation of Peru. And now the Ambassador of Bolivia has the floor. Ambassador Arce. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to greet you, the Assistant Secretary General, and each and every one of the panelists who have been with us this morning. Chair, Bolivia thanks you for the initiative of convening this meeting, and also demands the rights of peoples to sustainably use oceans. Oceans should be at the service of people, and people should care and protect our seas and oceans because they are vital for our life on this planet. The American community knows Bolivia has lost its coast, one that was 400 square kilometers, because of a war that took place, and it lost its coastline. As we said at the recent General Assembly, we revindicate here our right to have the use of coast, or a way to get to the coast. The General Assembly of the OAS adopted in the past 11 resolutions with regard to Bolivia's access to the seas. The first of these resolutions was adopted in 1975. Then resolutions were adopted every year from 1979 to 1989, and the issue has remained on the agenda of the General Assembly until 2013, when Bolivia then went to the International Court of Justice about this matter. The 11 resolutions identified, all of them identified the negotiation as the way we could peacefully resolve this difference that we have with Chile. And the Republic of Chile voluntarily has supported this on 3 different occasions. The International Court, in its decision in 2018, invited the 2 countries to negotiate so that rights can be restituted through peaceful means. And this should be done in a multilateral forum. Chair, I would like to conclude by thanking you for this initiative, which allows the member states of the OAS to also defend and protect the seas, which is part of our world heritage. Thank you. Thank you very much. The observer delegation of Portugal has the floor.
Thank you. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will speak English.
Permanent Council on such a timely topic. Portugal is totally committed to promoting a public order of the oceans based on the international law, as well as to ensuring a better governance of the ocean and sustainable use of its resources. In this respect, Portugal considers that COP26 outcome on the reinforcement of the ocean climate nexus and the continuation of the ocean dialogue under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was globally positive, because it is becoming increasingly clear that we must direct more resources and attention to supporting coastal communities in adapting to climate change and accelerate research, finance, technology, and partnerships to scale up ocean action. As French Ambassador Poivre d'Arvor and Ambassador Issa Cort from Chile already mentioned, Portugal will co-host, together with Kenya, the second United Nations Ocean Conference that will take place in Lisbon from 27th of June to 1st of July 2022. And we are counting on the participation of all UN member states at the highest possible level. We expect that this conference will aim at finding concrete solutions to ocean problems through science and innovation. And this conference will also address the blue economic dimension and the goal of a sustainable ocean economy resulting from the balance between economic activity and the long-term capacity of ocean ecosystems to support that activity. In this respect, Portugal is grateful for the countries which are contributing to the UN Trust Fund aimed at supporting the preparations of the UN Lisbon Conference and also aimed at promoting the participation of developing countries with priority to the least developed countries and small island developing countries to the Lisbon Conference. Just a final word, Mr. President, to express our confidence that the One Ocean Conference promoted by France and our Ocean Conference that will take place in Palau and also co-hosted by the United States will be major contributions towards a successful conference in Lisbon. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Muchas gracias a la misión observadora de Portugal.
Much, Portugal. Ambassador France has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary. The protection of oceans, as has already been said, is vital. In 2022, we are approaching a great moment looking at climate change, but in and above that, we do have some constraints. As the speakers who spoke before me said, we have to do our level best to have concrete results. The One Ocean Summit of the United Nations organized and in coordination with other countries is an additional effort based on support from the United States and Panama, and it will be held in Lisbon, as my colleague said. One Oceans will look at very specific issues, specifically as mentioned by Costa Rica. We are looking at the governance of oceans, the blue economy and innovations, economic development that protects seas and oceans, and maritime transport, the reduction of ocean litters. The oceans have to be protected. There's no time to waste. Before us, what we have is a host of different meetings that are a must. And it should be a time to work together to come up with results. We really don't have any choice. We have to serve the small insular countries and other countries that depend on tourism or fisheries or fishing. France will have a strong presence for the countries of the Americas, as we have the same objectives within the framework of the same partnerships, and my country is more than willing to share all of the necessary steps and recommendations, and we will have a strong presence with the Americas in this very important stage in 2022, which will be alongside other meetings that were previously mentioned. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ambassador of Spain is recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you for the initiative for putting this topic on the special meeting of the Permanent Council, the consideration of oceans for sustainable economic developments. This is an initiative which will contribute to a move forward to have better management from the standpoint of multilateralism of common resources to protect the planet. Spain joins in this Permanent Council. All of those who have spoken about this sustainable use of the oceans and reiterates its commitment of Spain and the government for the ocean's resilience. I would like to share our experience and our initiatives with you, but I'm only going to highlight what Spain has done in the Antarctic Treaty for protection of the seas, and more recently, the declaration of the marine areas adopted by 20 countries to make progress in protected marine areas for mankind and to uphold our ecosystems and diversity. and increase resilience of oceans. This is based first and foremost on initiatives that will contribute to guarantee a more sustainable and resilient future. Also, let me just remind you that Spain is committed to spearhead new protected maritime areas for 2024 to protect the oceans and ensure sustainable development for areas in Spanish waters. The climate emergence and all of the ramifications is the biggest challenge in our times, and encourage us to move towards an energy ecological transition which is more fair and equitable. Oceans are a source of life. Livelihood has already been said. We need to protect them and curb their destruction. For Spain, this is a priority. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, we have concluded the agenda of this special session. The presentations and comments made today will be recorded in the minutes of this meeting. Thank you very much for your participation, for your comments, and we have touched on issues which are important for all. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.